And with your permission, we'll start with Mandala offering and prayer of taking refuge and generation of Bodhichitta.
Om Saji Peki Jukshing Metok Tram Rira Blink Shini De Ding Badi Sangye Jing Du Mikte Uluari Droku Namdak Jingla Chopar Shok. Perfect, pure holy gurus from the billowing clouds of wisdom and compassion in the sky of the Dharmakaya, please let fall a rain of profound and extensive Dharma upon the receptacle of those to be subdued exactly as they need. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniryatayami. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulations I gather through listening
to the teachings,
I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulations I gather through listening to the teachings, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulations I gather through listening to the teachings, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings.
Sanje judon zo ye shanam na chanchu pardo da ne jab so je da ye jin ko ye be so nam ji ro la pen je sanje zhu bor dong ni ning ji song do ju be dam ji ji sen ze kan jen den de ben chan na be mo tin jin ja zo lo so wan de zo xian zhen zhen zo ram zhen song ro gon la da ye mei ge san ta ron zhe be zhong wo shu zhe be ju be ta bian zhe ba ye sen ze xin nian na ma cha zhe lo 다소 상안조 사변바 시버디 당고 주고 다 드린 사변바디 다 사변바 당안조 다 시버랑이다 당아바메다 이제 때때네 또 다른 겨울음 지구군주네 숭주 배 발소래 자침보 사보 아니 라바도양 전주 생 넘버 난제다 거리 좀 쉬고 쉬어서 더디저 상황을 간단한 람주 지금 세미나로야 최마 예부터는 다다 요지 주주지금 주주체가서 맞다 줘요 말이야. 이제 정하다 디간이야 람주 트레이닝디 체베이나 아니 하고 싶지 도와다 이렇게 깨워서 그룹시샤 더디는 아주 연구 디간 준비해야지. 어디지 송로면요.
And so this is today we start the 4th Saturday. So this will be there will be no 5th Saturday. This will be it. So we're very fortunate this morning to be able to listen to his whole the deep and profound and vast expansive teachings of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and particularly to be able to receive from him the Bodhisattva vow. And so it's a tremendous, tremendous gratitude towards His Holiness for this, and also, which should spring in our minds a sort of sense of great delight that we were able to engage with His Holiness like this for, an hour and a half, and also and then in relation to the meeting, our kind of Dharma meetings together today to discuss and listen to the teachings, to remember that it's such a great fortune for us to receive, to have this opportunity.
다들 저 기치슈리 계산 도이가서 아니 지게 전쟁 실행하듯 송송아 좀 되게 다들 저디 인지민지 공부 코르바치 고도가 제상가 다디 공부 코발라 단다고네 깔레데스 마제비신 시글라우데 람상 코랑 아니 주니를 지주도 냠버샤기 인생 손로보다 아니 되네 지게 차범이 비시고도 지긴 있어야 될 람상 용서 말아 봐. 저한테 공고도 저한테 인연이야 동화 셰직 단다 맹아 닝부들도 동화 다단 저러 차 세도 딘나는 개체직 콤베도 세도 송송아 딩아주 인지민지 토르냐바나 다 말하지 마소냐다 치워 타니월에 인도점배 아니 개체슈데다 저지디만 손에 안 간디스 채우래 저지 간디스 고래 슬라비나 다디네 teaching 법에 당만이 동만이 처럼제스 다 당고만 손에 우리 당부디 까부 사병지 라린 세티 저장다 말한도 조 현차 중견되게 현차매버 두시 차과매버 두시 지저 송번나신 디나로리아 다 소소남주 현차 치서디 다 지금 중국어 변조이네래 아니 류다 조 류가 예수 같은 집이 있나요? 디 니세가 삼런 매버치 디다 야르 지게 라마다 아니 지금 상계의 전주 셈벌이야 퓨비 아니 되네 지게 내기 자와 강체버디 심진이 되는 시제 디파 모셔베이나 땅셔베이나 딜레이 아니 수남체버치 사변 딜레파베 사변 답에 매버선도 중국도 예제 탐지다 말 수남 강체서를 땅다 대나라 처신 매버디 자고 그래서디 거부 사병이 나가셔야 돼. 되네 몰람지 또 세르점배 다그저 지기 파르도들이 아니 파르도값소 지기 직난다 암다다 망고 유류점배 대조 상물로다 세대네 단다고네 르 땅차비나 아니 지기 디슈기 땅아주 지기 파르도값소 라완 마순이 또 등아준 라완 다 지라 매버선 없지래 대도 잠배 단다 세 다가랑 깔려 접시도 디기 슈디 인지게 마선 인플루언스 디 가주 슈체 중배이나 아니 디 가서래 파르도 당 아니 겨와 치면에 거수 지금 라마다 아니 지게 산제기 템바다 제베기 가서래다 템제 마선에 야디 투여자 아니 세상 개치슈디 몰람 톱세티 디니거들이야 몰람 톱기 몰람 치마메 참자르 세 남기가 주 직송구요가 몰람 톱티지 다테네 년 줄기베 간다는게 네 조셔게 근데만 러시안 디도 됐지 아니 지 전전 숨디 두인다 데네 수인진베 톱세디 더 가상 년이 슈차는 신제제 다 란주 지기 개와 디당 개와 치만는 것소 얘기 게르기든 소소라니 기든 카르 두비아 인스나 소 당진 머르버티 왕기 그냥 랑마기 수요래 셰마기 디기 수요래 디 인지미지다 갑대 쳐버치 개와 간디 지금 렘버 있나요 당진가 갑대 자토니 지용 소세디 순진베 톱디 안데 디레도가 데네 펜베톱세디 다 조디 지기 가르소래 전주기 심리 중 전남 전주기 심 디야 지기 동반이 고미야 디야 신된도 조베 전주기 단다 트라슈기 저름 지기 숨번나신 아니 제상가 녀몬놈 종세지 아니 지기 조 개치슈디 아니 지기 서모 동반이 고바디 랑기 동해시비 탑마이 랑기 동해시비 지부점 마임바 아니 지게 심진기 템버시 두비ton도 아니 시지드버디 뽕투야기 라나 배고를 손나 신체제 다 디게 된다라야 아니 군주 천주 선도 된다는 천주 심니 아니 그래서 그래다 디르도와 더 디장고 시드점베다 전담 천주 있습니다. 군주 천주 있습니다. 로양내양도 컴퓨터 템버 치고 선배 심주 잡고 그래스 템바티 땅 그래스 다 제상 아니 컴배 다 디월에 요직 송도가야 컴배 톱직도 와대 제상 같다 컴배면은 또 가지고 마소네다 균이 유형탑 제버렸다 아주 냠랜도 참제 제상 다 컴배 톱디 아니 마르기 천주 심리 중주 다 강에 뭐 송송아 다 디주 상말로 아니 양도 템퍼처지 아니 지금 뭐 시간 하고들이야 아니 지금 절람 켜다다 디워디네레레 슈고면도 디치란 좀마 로션다 캔도 서버 근데 주 상말로 냠냠 난고리스 제장가 때 시가 하버도 치고 냠냠 제 집에서는 말이 당 아주 많이 얘가 하버들 성격에 좀 당초 많이 얘고야 아니 두시도 좀도 그 토네 얘고야 이 얘를 qab려야 다 다제 제고야도 니랑 겁소니 니랑 나와셔라도 소버도 파르도기 나와셔당도 좋다 찾아와 유도 전에 아니 되죠 말아서 단다고는 냠냠 고야 아니 단디 니 먹고 응어야 아니 셈 가지고 지금 냄토바다 편박 가지고 숙취에 땅 토비 꾸롱 가지고 숙취에 여비는 대유수기 니람대에 상하요 도비야디 파르디오 값소 아니 아주 뭐서랑 개요 말때 이네 체디기 뉴버디 체디기 냠내 집에 뉴버들 때니 아니 고 파르도나르야 아주 마소네 나와야 샤르투였디 밀람 니모 그거야 고롱당 니람니 빼자리였디 아주 냠내 연구도 봐 근데 저는 고에 되게 첨부르셔 저는 듣지 어디서 다 주로나
and so it mentions in the text where we kind of left off at the 5 powers at the moment of death, and it talks about the instructions for in this tradition for the moment of death, and then it about how to use the 5 strengths or the 5 powers, and so the first power, so I'll just run over this again. The first power is these 5 strengths or points about, and the first one it talks about the wholesome seeds or the white seed, and how we offer up to. And so you can't. So first of all, the thing to remember about these things is actually to talk a little bit about familiarization or cultivation just before I go into those, is that when we develop, say, at the time of death, then we require, as it said in the sutra, the 5 kind of discriminations, and particularly it's essentially kind of the single pointed meditation on emptiness, and also the discrimination of no attachment. Now, these things cannot be developed immediately or quickly. You have to, these things have to be meditated on, cultivated over a period of time, and we have to familiarize ourselves with these things. And so when death comes to us, we have to remember what are the preparations that are required in order for us to face death. And then in terms of the first power, we talk about the wholesome seed or the white seed, and this is to offer up. It says in the text all of our possessions, but also to the gurus and the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. We offer up the merit of the merit of all of the 3 doors of all of the activities that we've performed in a kind of unattached, unbiased way. And we also, but this is also that, all the activities and offering up all the activities that we have done for the welfare of all of the sentient beings. And so there's no greater merit than this wholesome or white, the power of the wholesome or the white seed. Coming to the second of the strengths or powers, is the strength of the aspiration. And here we have to try to let go of all of our fears. So for instance, it's also the aspiration is also to make a aspirational fervent prayers to for help within the bardo. Now when we're in the bardo state, but when we're in the bardo state, we have to try and let go of all of our fears and negativity and but it's difficult for us to be sort of in control at that time. And so this is this is getting to the condition where we can be in control is a life of practice, where the practices and the activities that we've engaged in this life then provide an influence or support through us for when we're in the bardo, and then to move on to the next life. And so we are also and then we also make the aspiration. So that's for the bardo, but then we also make the aspirational prayers, what are often called the kind of stainless prayers, that we in our future lives we will be able to encounter the gurus and meet the Buddha's teachings. So this is the prayer of aspiration. The prayer of revulsion, or maybe rejection, is as we mentioned last time, the main for this life and the next life, the main sort of focus of this is that we because ranches in rebete because sunchim bitotsun ranches in das in rebe ranches in rebe das in rebe nigal. So it's in the text, it actually says about the kind of rejection of self-cherishing, but actually it has to be both self-cherishing and also self-grasping. And so we have to be able to we make the strong prayer that we are able to counteract in ourselves both the grasping of the inherent existence of the self, but also of our self-cherishing. The fourth power, the power of impetus, or a kind of propelling power, is here related. It's related to, again and again, training in both the ultimate and the conventional bodhicitta. And so in terms of the ultimate bodhicitta, meditating on emptiness, and as His Holiness has explained to us today, it's for the sake of not just for pacifying our own. This is to meditate on emptiness and to pacify is not just for the purpose of pacifying our own suffering being, but which would be a sort of meditating on emptiness for one's own enlightenment. But His Holiness explained that we have to conjoin that, so mere liberation, but we have to conjoin that with the emptiness which also wishes to attain in works for the with a motivation to work for the welfare of all sentient beings, and to remove the obscurations to omniscience, and therefore to be able to help with the pacifying others' suffering as well. So this power of propulsion or impetus is to train in and constantly familiarize ourselves with both the conventional and the ultimate bodhicittas, and so that we can through that again and again training in those, we can have some kind of strong sort of confidence or strong impetus ourselves, powerful impetus to continue to meditate on those. And so then the fifth one is the strength of familiarization, and there's nothing that we can't, there's very little that we can achieve if we don't cultivate or familiarize ourselves with things. And this is especially true in relation to practice, that real practice can't arise unless we continually work at cultivating. For instance, if you're cultivating for the methods which are used to cultivate the mind, bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, then we have to be aware and mindful of all of the different causes and methods that are required for us to create, to develop that and to practice that. And so then this we train in those things, we familiarize ourselves with these things, and then of course at the time of death they can be useful for us. And you can in terms of all the different points that are required, you can read them in the relevant materials. But this is these practices are, again, not so it mentions the moment of death as the title of this section, but this is not only at the time of death. This is a continual practice of engaging in the discriminations and checking ourselves and checking checking our practice. So and also, in relation to the bardo, perhaps there's a way in which we can kind of draw a kind of similitude of that within our own lives and practice, and that is that in a sense the dream world, in the dreams after we have gone to sleep, kind of similar in a way to the bardo. So if we're able to, before we go to sleep, if we're able to, as an example, we're able to create a very pure motivation and a kind of strong kind of ascertainment with the various elements of the teaching, and then perhaps in our dreams it's possible that maybe pure kind of understandings or things will occur to us, and then if we're able to sort of do this kind of preparatory, this kind of similitude of it with using the teachings in that way, then maybe from the kind of familiarization of that in this life, that it's possible that then when we actually get to the point of death and then proceed into the bardo, that those signs or pure sort of dreamlike purity can appear within the bardo itself.
다 주경 공부지도 뒤에 됐다. 개심부 십지레샤. 다딩 란주 망체지기다 디커도 될이야. 아니 고화데 다다지 마라. 아니 디기 송분의 신진냐면 제마도 베인자 아니 먼저 최고마디 최고매게 된다도 라고도 와. 다딜이야 대송분의 신 가르체베나 태과 치중도 취 간대지 체베 있나요? 조 아니 등진 리야 녀부터니 치고레스 제상가 트란슈기 되어름치게 강나만나신 제상가 트란슈기 되어름치 또 세부지를 가르송송 제병하란 권한이야 돈이 개침부 차야디 가르에서나 먼저 돈이 남샤만 보지 주용야다 다음에 남샤만 보디 남가 산제베 룰이야 개침부 차야디 녀몬 죽수기 남샤가 토네 돈이 sableto bras kadin richna so atrashu
nyumungi karin nyumungi
돈이 다음에 남샤 망고 직도성아 주는 거 상계에 나로래 개정부 차야디 묘몽기 남샤 적당 민자비 온 묘몽기 남샤 적당 민자비 온기 아니 돈이디 자침부 차단디를 봤어 되송송아 제장가 딘데인데 말한도 청알로비 제장가 민지게 람다 최지게 람세 디니디나로라다 최컨디지네 유튜브치 란저 지금 조사 집장 컨디 지기네 컨텐게죠 컨디 지기네 얘기 디 민지게 람 간을 두고 들어오면도 최지게 람 간 두고 들어오면도 최지게 람스도 다음에 또 베시라 이 최지게 람디 야 민벌이야 딜이야 누바 제투야 될라야 아니가란주 튕긴 초사보다 저거 좀 없다 지가리 초사를 장주 참아디가리야 뽕도버지 고도와 어디르샤 지금 공부지도 되세티 그냥 디줄근데
and so then we move on to the next kind of root verse of the Geshe Chikawa 7-point mind training, which says all teachings share a single purpose. And this is an extremely important point that's made here. Really, I think we don't have a good understanding of this point, and then actually it's very difficult without this understanding to engage, to really have a kind of pure or proper practice of the Dharma, and we really lose that real sense of a proper sense of real practice in missing this point. And so in terms of the most important thing is that all of the, kind of meditations and practices at some point have to help us to be able to act as an antidote to the self-grasping. That's a really essential point. And I think His Holiness mentions it, I think quite clearly mentioned it today, or at least this is the way that I've understood it, is that he asking the question, why is the kind of understanding of emptiness so important, and why, the understanding of the lack of a selflessness, and the understanding of emptiness, why are these important to understand the meaning of? And this is in relation to the many. This is extremely important in the way and the many sort of presentations or different explanations of how the mental afflictions are posited or stated. And so that's a very important point about emptiness and the relation between the presentation of the mental afflictions. And also here we need to, we talk about the two different kinds of path, the path of ripening and the liberating path. And, we have to find a way in which our practice is always subsumed within either the ripening path or the liberating path. So, for instance, performing practices to purify negativity and to accumulate merit are included within the path of ripening. And then, but the essential aspect of the liberating path is that of the wisdom which wisdom which understands the selflessness. So all of these practices have to be subsumed in. We have to find a way to subsume our practice into either the ripening path or the liberating path.
다 때문에 방법이 좋을 수 세티. 다 방법이 좋을 수 세도 저 개치슈디 아니 지게 최체급이야. 아니 미신기 소소 최치기 여바 하고 해야 돼. 개치 뭐 말이스. 개치슈디 소소sem도 소소 주다 당도지. 어디 중보이나 아니 방법이 좋을 수 세티 뜻이 경도와 어디 개침버리셔. 제가 가다 멜라마 쪽이 망보유설이야 소소 칼다고 잡고 리스 미망보유설라 소소 칼다고 잡스 소소 지고 대비갑이야 소소 셈로 따지는 대쇼세 주송분하신 다 소소 셈이야 마텔로스듯이 소소 셈이야 게임해버지 마통이 봐도 소소기 따지는 대리 개침버리셔스 어디로 전에 방법이 좋을 수 없어요. 뜻이 뒤견도가 다 때문에 이때 버시 균도 된 세디 다 개체슈디 말한주기 최 가서 견상부지 튼견 상부지의 탭이 있나요? 들려야 즉 자신마저 토네 아니 최체 고급 통야 통투야 개념버지 중부이나요? 안 대응 최체비 튼견 아직 전주 셈리 알게 당투야 닝지 알게 당투야 어디 이때 버시스도 이 대화스도 남중 균동아주 기부 내가 주 직된비 기부세야 되면 뭐지 창말로야 최지 고급이야 준투겠지 너도나 아니 독분용의 연구쳐봐 기분용의 연구쳐봐지 저우레세 티 이때 버시 준도된 세티 ton다디 도스토유스레 다 이행장 툼마 정화인 세도다 알아주 깔레 잡잡게 가시선다 깔레 모든들 잡투서 말에 아니 다디다 지기 체딜래야 통주주고로 봐스 이게 다센더데 제장가 다센 토양 연구를 이행장 툼마 정화인 다 참래 말한주 아니 지금 컨트롤하면서 제초좀 오늘 전에 튕긴 차상 상산에 제초주고르데 얘네야 람상 아니 디체는 지금 말이 섬서 수수 셈나래야 즉 다센 연구를 디당 아주 지게 디 다센데 대해서 충중으로 지래 단단한 용용석으로다 이나양 야네 양도 콤트리데 땡지 ngane 송베기 랍제도 로종게 랍제도 야네 양도 삼로 당데비나 랑싱기 니디 셈나로래야 겐예 조수 교투야지다 겐 사보도 조야 아니 지리 차당 조수 만로야 차배 조수 만로야 기 삼로지 종베이나 아니 로종베기 가서 그래 다지기 가서 그래 람상 수주기 셈나로리아 님보 람상 땡투야지 딘디 중부이나 양양 통나 정부이세 안디 벤저리아디 지금 다选 켜버도 아니 다간 람상 슌도 좀 단만 마사바치지 파 틀레 다 파주 추주 제베네 디간 지 다다 대투에 중부 나세지 벤디 자도와 어디 년 직주나다
And so then moving on to the next verse from the root text of 7-point training, and it says, of the two witnesses, rely upon the principal one. And so here it's not possible, it's not talking about reading other people's minds or this kind of thing. It's talking about how what we're principally talking about is how and checking other people or it's talking about checking our own mind. So the principal witness being checking our own mind. And the Kadampas have a saying that when you're in a sort of crowded place with many people, make sure to be mindful of what you say. When you're alone, make sure to be very mindful of the condition of your own mind. So they are saying that here it's called the principal witness is the one which checks your mind for the faults of your own mind, and that's how they when they talk about the witnesses relying upon the principal one. The next verse reads, always maintain a joyful attitude. And so when practicing and good conditions come along, it's quite easy for us to be able to kind of take those good conditions and use them in our Dharma practice. But we also have to really understand that in maintaining a joyful attitude, that when negative circumstances arise for us, that this is also our negative circumstances arise, it can increase or enhance our compassion, and we should recognize these negative circumstances as something which is very good to practice, very good for us to use for practice, and therefore also you have a joyful attitude both when things are running well and when things are are running not so well for ourselves. So this is not just taken in the context of a sort of worldly joy of happiness, but also to understand it in the context of
거거도라
이 바시 균드 dance 아니 저런 디기 지스킨디 데고 소노 코노마 임바 아니 디
디 이디세 디 지딘베 대화로 거예요 말です지딘베 먼저 셈을 세베기 위치는 흘려대세야 돼 마임바
야
디 이디세 거야디 세상가 로 셈네야 기부지 충분히나야 튕긴 약보지 대단 최배이나 차당 초수만로야
예.
개념부터 충분히나야 시당 초수만로야 어디 니가로 튕긴 니가로 최제고 그거를 통고 그랬어.
And so you need to whenever you're maintaining this joyful attitude, you need to understand this. We're not just talking about this kind of worldly happiness ways. Take rest and just relax and be happy. Be happy. don't worry, be happy kind of thing. What we're talking about is that this kind of joyous attitude is that, you know, even if positive circumstances arise for us, then we make sure that we don't fall into kind of the side of having too much attachment. And if the negative circumstances also befall us, then we need to make sure that we don't fall into the side of kind of, you know, a revulsion or anger in relation to, and so that we maintain a joyous attitude whatever circumstances befall us. The next verse from the root text says, if this can be done when distracted, you are proficient. And so this is sort of describing how we understand whether we've got whether we're proficient in the trainings or not. So it's a sign of to reveal to us whether we're proficient in the trainings or not. And so, for instance, this is, you know, for instance, when anger arises in us, we, you know, or all of the, let's say all of the causes for anger are there, right there, that anger is about to break out and arise within us. And then we're able to have that sense of that, oh, this is really not okay. I really mustn't engage in with this. It's not okay to engage with this. And then that's a kind of one kind of awareness, and then we transform that into a support for the mind training practices. So it's given as a mind training advice that we don't allow ourselves to fall into. So this is that's a small example there of where anger is just about to arise. But the mind training advice to us is that we don't fall into these extremes of you know, sudden anger or attachment, and that as soon as we feel that we're moving in the direction of anger or attachment, we immediately have to rely on the antidote. And in the text, what it gives is an example of how of a horse rider, and how the horse rider, even when they're distracted, doesn't fall down to either side. And so here we could sort of relate that to the two sides of either anger or attachment. So even that when we're distracted, we don't fall down to either of those two sides in our practice.
다 주거 로종의 탐지스에 디간 레샤 다 로종의 탐지스에 디냐리야 대시 두두시잡이나 아니 지기 로종네 송바데다 로종네 송바데다 아니 수수기 차단이디 겐두도나 겐두 침베이나 안 탐지디게와 로종의 송바데다 아니 로종의 송바데다 수수님네 제번이 튠소나 탐지 튠바 들봐 디양 간디치 고르스도 디 칭주 나로리아 디나로라 yani tangi chang phyba jazanga lajase chudo lajase di pekhe bore sangu yor this is susu di cheblia boba gogris now give chol che boba chona digbe gi le chebgala ramse gyobeligwa namgyu gewa che ya boba mebina ani namgyu chepsarana cheshegro ani digi che marana namsan ani chongtongro ba 어디 계시셔디 아주마소네 로종디 체베가브야 소수 셈디 로종의 튠버지 중부이나 뽑아도 되베토네 두고에 샤고 요레세 디케심부르샤 자장 탐직세야디 야 드시드 도츠지 로로지 친구도와 다디나로네 당부디 가르도스나 로 지든 숨나 따도 럽세요. 다지 전전 숨 직송도 봐. 전전 숨디 나로네 당부디 아니 로종 켈랑보다 켈랑다 민겨와. 로종 켈랑다 민겨와 시두점비 다 디나로레야 개치슈디 가르도스나 아가 디아우슈도 럽세디. 마 로종 라빈 인스탑 아니 지게 태과 치중 태과 미게 라바 추중 라바 네 손데 라바 띵징게 라바 셔링게 라바 chanjusembe 라바 디주시다 고치라 마츠비체 디주시다 아니 따니마 줘봐다 소소 마신비 좀징기 띵예 제고고 말했어 앙아 로종기냐 멤버 인스 라바이나 아니 담지 당보다 게로브레스 디 야부슈도 디 인도자베 마란조 로종기 냠년 신년지라 태버 첨부도 태버 중후도 태버 딩 참말로야 소소로 거고 통배통네 냠년도 소소로 거고 통배통네 거고 스나고바 소소로야 necessary 어 통제 sheguris jazanga di jermichige labje tuji lamrinana야 jazanga 태과 첨부지기 태과 충우다 태과 딩기 labje디 아니 지 거고 마톤 비좀 젠디 마톤나 아니 초리세 초리세 줘봐 어디리 요레스 배나 아란주 주주친부 다 별로 주주친부 시요레 jazanga 길루베디 다 맞아 다 맞아마서네 리네 초를 다 쉔바들이 jazanga 길루베지기 사자 그 님미기 최디 아란주 최체버야 고구마토나 텐제를 연구요 그랬어 디아보도와 텐제르스나 하고 왜 줄로 텐제르스나 네디야르 그들 도와르스라나 줄로 텐제르스가 오케이 어디 연구를 있어 저런부터 파진 손자도 봐 제장가 어디도 다 랍자 당부디 내가 첨부를 샤 다 이버디 지갈소래 다 디 현다 띵게 제디 개침부를 예송해 드리자 이버티 그전에는 토저로 마셔 봤지 저바 수수다 진 로종냠내 지야다 안디 중베이나 아 현리에 띵 먹고 있는데 제베는 자원이네 되고 현 띵구리스 현리 띵에 아니 좀 수수통제 가르치 주셨잖아 다디 쿠류 숨겨고데 두두로 지도와 디 자원나를 세베는 신년부 쥐어봤다 세드도와 신년부 쥐어봤다 아니 자포다 trouble 소바 토주 쥐어봤는 빵데 세지도와 저장 신년부 쥐어봤을 신편토 신고나 인보다 편토보다 자침부터 지유요 말이스 아니 자포다 trouble 때 수수 장바의 인지 인도도 제제 수술이야 제 근에든지 여든이 미념도 아니 지기 배 디메스 가서 남도 메싱이 손으로 제제 디체베는 수술을 나선 거 맞지 미신기 아니 현전 쉐벌이야 객차로 요봐 재산 캡처를 했어야지 재장은 자보다 trouble 토주 접은 반대 돌드나 아니 단지기 가담벨 라마 쪽이 아니 디던 디체베 최고래 디던 디체베 제는 야부요 말했으니 럽제도죠 양내 양도 상당하고 그래서디 니버드셔 다 숨바디 아니 돌드나 디레도가 갈소래 초를 말와 세도 잠베 아니 찍딜리 아니 갈소래 야가체 찍딜리 도와체제 통중체인 거 말했어 제장가 베나디나를 빼지 좋은 주베 아니 채월이야 지가서래 97배가 총알을 냐주 제일 소시는 자원이 되는 말이지. 어다 전주선바지는 드존아인 거 말이지. 또 둘둘둘 쉬고 있다. 어디나 제버처럼 저 자와드 말로셔는 디나를 빼고도 와. 어디지? 다들 어디 주는 게 둘둘 중이나.
And so sorry, I've lost my place here. And so then the next lines are sorry, I've lost my place there. The next lines are commitments of. So now we come to the kind of sixth major section of the mind training text, which is the commitments of mind training. And before discussing a little bit about the commitments of mind training, I think it's important to just understand a little bit about what kind of the commitments or the pledges or samaya means in relation to. And so in terms of the mind training advice, the commitment or the kind of pledge or the, what's the word? Hang on, I've got the word. The sort of the loyalty is almost, there's a word which is used to describe in the dictionaries, that is used to describe what it means, what a samaya or the pledge or commitments mean. And it uses this word, which is something kind of like a loyalty to one's own particular side. So in this case, in terms of what would be, so one's particular side, you can take that to mean in terms of the mind training advice would be the practices which are in concord with the mind training advice. And therefore, if you stay within those practices in concord, then you're not transgressing the mind training commitments. And if you develop things, particularly in terms of mind training, in terms of attachment and anger and falling into that side of things, then you transgress the trainings of the. So it's almost it's kind of a loyalty to the mind, the advice which is given in the mind training text, and therefore remaining loyal to those means that you practice what is concord with those things, and so and also this is in terms of in terms of not to do what it is to engage in, what it is to not engage in. And also we should also, if you have a strong sense when you're practicing of the advantages of things, the positive kind of meditations and practices, and you have a sense of the advantages of those, then as soon as you sort of encounter in yourself or in situations a sort of situation which is in contradiction or a negative, in contradiction with those, then you'll immediately see a sense of regret. And if you can see those faults and not able to engage in them through looking, using the mind training advice to search, to look at your own mind, then that is how you sort of, you're loyal to the commitments of the mind training. So I just wanted to say a few words about this sort of samaya or pledge, and you need to know what the kind of main presentation of that is. So then in the text it talks about training constantly in the three basic principles, or three, and so the three basic principles. The first one is not to transgress the mind training commitments. So not to transgress the mind training commitments. And so here we whether even if we're sort of let's say practicing in terms of the mind training practice, if we're also practicing the higher trainings of ethical discipline, concentration and wisdom, whether in the Mahayana path or whichever vehicle we're in, it's very important that we don't that you're a great practitioner of you're a great practitioner of mind training, and therefore you can ignore lesser kind of trainings, let's say. So for instance, if you're if you're a mind training practitioner, what you need to be able to do is to know very clearly what are the requirements that are needed in order to be able to practice in the three different vehicles and all the different the three different vehicles, and how right from the lower scope vehicles up until the higher vehicles. You need to know all of the requirements. And J. Rinpoche makes a short comment in his stages of the path to enlightenment, where he says that you need to make sure that you don't fall into the extreme of not not taking all of the advice of each of the three vehicles, and so that you don't become biased in any way, to overly personally attached to or biased to particular practices, but you need to understand the requirements of all of them. So in relation to this kind of unbiasedness in Tibet, we have the the main four religious traditions, and maybe most of us have had more encounter with the Galupa tradition, but also we also need to understand Rinpoche did Chan Sakya Kaji Nima Dinsuki Gugo Dinsuki Hako Wore Sonrebes Chan Dirbe Sosuki Nyamlen Chela Kaju Sakya Nima Dinsuki
di chazanga pena gilu bachi nere sakya idere ningma idere kaju inere chuju chimbu chigi nyamlen nanye chigi ane ngare di chene digre shabadul samatang gogu mare di sambole sona 아니 남성
셴부체고 말해요. 나이 체고です. 나이
저저 통주 저저 라
온다.
통중례로와
네네. 예.
통중례로 저전 띠 통중례이나 아니 가르치고요. 디나르 띠도와 캐수에서야 돼. 캐수 중부이나 아니 로정의 탐지도 기록을 했어. 그냥 조당 알게 줘도 들어봐. 알게요나 연del랍도 말아. 어디를.
Yeah. And so we need to be very careful, let's say, if you had, it doesn't matter which tradition you are primarily from, if you, there should be no sense in which you sort of say, I only need this, I don't need any of the others. It's sort of a kind of divisiveness of over attachment to one's own tradition, and then what that tends to breed is a kind of looking down on the other traditions, and that tends to lead to pride, and the pride then also prevents us from seeing the qualities of the other one. So it's very important that we don't have this kind of bias, which is overly attached and overly biased towards one's own tradition. This is very important. In terms, so the second of the three, basic principles mentioned in the training constantly in the three basic principles is it's to avoid all forms of reckless behavior. And maybe as a mind training practitioner, maybe you wish to show off how you have no you have good qualities, or you have no, in the text it says no self-cherishing, and so in order to do this, you may in the text there's some very nice words in the commentary, and I encourage you later on to read the details of the commentary in order to get more details. But it says in the text, it gives some examples such as chopping down. It says such as chopping down powerful trees. Now, powerful trees here would mean, in a sense, trees which are, beneficial, great, or, wonderful, great, or beneficial trees. And then it also says, or befriending lepers. And so, in this sense, you may. So this here, it's been considered as it says, avoid all reckless forms of behavior intended to demonstrate to others that you have no self-cherishing, such as chopping down powerful trees or befriending lepers. And so here we in order to, so Richard did the kulon the destroy the chan did the social ranches in maybe the gideng gichedu nanzu digi kase zepo tens dowa chene and nanzu kare 균카스의
셴다 띵고레스
셴
미션보다 뚱게 쳐버렸어. 소송하란 뒤에는 지금 요새 납디오 말이었어.
Yeah. And so it's not for one's own, it's not to kind of show off for one's own because of wealth, you know, to show oneself off, so to speak, but it's in order to you know, to show others that it's a good thing to do. So if they have doubts about sort of helping, let's say for instance with lepers, you know, if you are doing that practice, that's a good practice, but it should be done not to show off, but to show that it's show others that it's good to befriend them, and that you're not worried about the sickness, this kind of thing. So, and then the last lines of that section read about it says not coming into conflict with the example of the masters of the the masters of the Khatan tradition. So all of these, you should avoid all reckless forms of behavior which come into, we should think about what we're doing and how we're acting, and make sure it doesn't come into contradiction with the advice that's given to us by the mind training masters. And the third basic principle is about avoiding all forms of partiality. And so, you know, if you have someone who is higher and then someone who's lower, then we don't sort of engage more positively with those who are high, and then look down upon those, look down and you know, look down on those who are lower. We don't treat others as great and then abuse those lower as you know, sort of abuse or bully or abuse those who are lower. This is not the practice of someone who is engaged in the Bodhisattva path. And it would be good to read this, the details of this commentary, to understand more about these three principles.
Okay. Tine ta okay. Teacher. Ta dumba junlaran so shas. Ta dumba junlaran so shas digi ari chigi sozu che bena chanjusin bin nyamne chigi yunere. Sodar gi nyamne chigi yunere, sang gi nyamne chigi yunere. Nyamne di sim dingni che. Ani chigi pajongoliya chigi sim 디치교 말스가 소래 비길이야 비기 미신기 민남 만제바 미를 만제바 치교 말이지 저장 비교 파종하고 미 디기 미를 더버치고 그랬어 비 파종하고 미 디기 지금 단 들은 거상 아주 상하고 취어도 주인비나 디나로레 베니 최고야 뭐 보여 저 상하야 땡지 치교 말이지 전주 선배기 냠내 연비 있나야 즉 카실이야 전주선배 랍자도 잡고야 용거리 카실이야 소소유기 냠내 처음도 미션벌이야 다 먹어야 되는 용거리 그죠 아니 인지미지 저선가 듬버디 교르고스 샘리 교화동 이나야 소소유기 미다 듬비 토네 아니 소소유기 랍자코 미션벌이야 땡고야도 땡 먹어야 남주르 토네 류이네레 아이네레 저람 컨디지인비네 미파종을 뚱긴 최고야 돼 계신 분이었어. 지난가 당하야 지금 인도도 좀 체제니 남산 체체로도 제법 답도해서 봐. 아니 지금 비 옷을 되고 체 지어봐. 어디 지금 두 지교 말해서 지적 가로도 왔나. dumbajon을 소샤스. 근데 양라 녀버 줘버자서 다 미를 카당야들이 당 아주 녀버 치슈나게 치슈도 당 아주 배 그뒤 인에 싸대 딱 들이. 네, 양라 저승을 상주 좀 된디기 카당의 그 왕제의 수류 시지 좀 된디기 더 나를 손도 선배 아이 마당 저베 간사기 아니 밀이야 didn't this church love chogur 마도 and the member 지기 미션 바 하선로 마잉잉 미지리야 아니 견 줘베이나 연대냐면이 줄이 시지 송도가 몸이 다야다 그도 디 여러 또 가도돼 아당 저기 간사가 최송이 간사가 최송은 미쳐디 냠버 줄다래 시중되게 지금데 주가나 봐 어디 좋다 아주 심나 냐르지 근데 신조 강야 미세모 시두점배 다디 개정부르자 디 야라 녀버 주마자다 신조 강야 미세모 세디니 대화 전부도 요 고단 가르에서는 다 미신발 가르진 당면 시두점배 미신비균 통구도 인에 랍초로 봤을라나 다 삼루직 당치 신조 강야 미세모 그런데서는 미신기 균디 수수나야 직당 미신비기 코랑기 균지 니요르스 이나야 마랑기 미나나 마통야디 마랑기 튜니 통야지요르스 마랑기 튜니 통야지 아주 인간주 줬다야지 주민 이지기 넘도 줬다야지요르스 어디 지금에서다 단순데 데레도와 디나를 디하고도 대화나는 시비 있는 디더부지 마까나셔 제가 아니 라바도야 지기 최책임이네 최마칭이지네 진짜 간제질이네 얘기 랑경원이 아니 나마타비 공원이 금전도 체제 나마타비 금전도 체제 콜리견도 슬라야 되네 춘이라 보면 다디 야보시스도 되네뇨모 간증을 좀선 다 개치슈데 소수기 최체 그거도 컨디스으로 했으나 네네 뇨모 강체도 조 소수기 균 그나 미카시 카다고 자마서 체 디카기 녀들라니 뭐요 계지 시뭐 시지 참의 시 어디 있는 미디 이지미지 소수샘 다지지 당에 때지看些的忙타기 서에 이제 어디 디마견 당부디 까야 한 가시 차회 초네요 수준냠네 투쇼용 디까고야 가시 시당을 초네 야 견망고 용고요 어디서 상말은 요모 간증은 좀 놓스디 디르샤 되네 드부르와 탐지에 빵다 최체비까블이야 야 저기 균진 저렇게는 소보다 디 조지가 라마이네 기시네 아니 최다 지금 최소게 내가 지금 간대지 힘이 있나요 너저야 아니 저기 인구르당 아니 지금 망보 연구를 다 대조 상말로 기치셔디 녜디 최체디 아니 드부 야고 연구도 말이야 년년다 다 벤조 연구도 삼지 좀 전에 튠 지규어 말이야 다들도 드부라와 탐제방 다 되네 도징기 세방세디 도징기 세방세도 도르드나 디 드부라와 탐제방 세도 도징 세방세디니 제 잡도가 가전에서는 대조 창말로 얘기 단다 철 때는 수빙의 이내리 아니 지구는 지기 디카르소를 데스 셴베토네 아니 뭐 간데 수업이 있나요 대조 창말로 도징기 세레스 등진기 줄로샤스 도도다 도징기 세세 등진다 착과기비 줄은 쪽도 제상 디 도징기 세레샤스 디 파방고스 가전수 도징기 세세는 소소가 되는 뭐 기비 좀 어디를 되네 슝상고 마덴스 다 슝상고 마덴스는 아니 파르볼이야 다 지기 다들이야 아니 지기 렌로 투유네요 아니 렌로야 디 바카쇼스 딕 로정다 담시 지구도 와야 남상하고도 와서 파종어들 지기 랍투도네 어따디 말라구면 세디 슝상고 마덴스 아니 샹에 먹었을 때 지기다 데 당보다 잡으러 지리샤 아니 싱이 조도자지 라바이나 안텔이야 랭카도 맞아버치지 디들 가르친스나 디들 댄지 용 처럼 것도 그래서 당분에 봐 고가야 되려도 당 창먹고 세티 아제상가다 창먹고서도 아니 딱 그도 레마자비나 마음발이야 고급 삼지 미자버지라지 니 콜다 두자 드린 라베이나 니 지가서래 두저 다다르샤 삼에 두저인데 충분히나야 자와 니네 파종하리야 디리야 내년치인 거 말이야 창마고 자 아니 내려면 법세도 에미기 쩐 투엘 다티 도스 카고다지 하라자 지금 그뒤에 깨져디마서는 interesting 치셔더데 any how was once. Koi ji ni go chi zu na ju sem de rang xin be mi gi jian ji xie won de sem be gan na xiu ji de wa. O de zu de ji ge chen ju sem bi jue be yin bi na. Ram san di sem di sam lo ya bo ji da ni nian gu zhe ma do lam san ko ran any mi gi jian zhang chu ye ge zhe de zu de lam san nian yu ma. O de zu ni ga chen bu le sha. A da ding ye de bo de ji ju na ge.
And then, so working down through the mind training, the next verse of the mind training text, which says, "Change your attitude, but remain neutral." And so here, whichever, let's in terms of our own practice, we should, whether that's the practice of the Bodhisattva path, whether that's the practice of the kind of individual liberation, or in terms of the tantric path, whatever it is, we should be very careful that we shouldn't show kind of outer indications of what's going on for ourselves in order to look kind of impressive or attractive for the sake of others. For instance, in the tantric teachings, a lot of the practices which take place in the tantric context are actually to be done in a hidden fashion, so they're not to be sort of outwardly revealed. And so in terms of and then in the Bodhisattva trainings, then there are things which are to be done which are to be done in relation to others, and therefore you may need to exhibit them. But there are also things which are sort of private. There are things which are to be done only in a sense for one's own internally within one's own practice. And so we shouldn't be sort of revealing those things externally to others, but it's very important and if we are if there are outward indications or outward expressions of our behavior, if let's say that we have to give advice or give some kind of advice, and then we would always make sure that our three doors of the body, speech, and mind, and the kind of conduct and our behavior is always in accord with what is always in accord with what others need. So it's this sense of changing changing yourself internally, but not only when appropriate, revealing things which are suitable to others, but not mostly not giving outward indications. The next verse of the root text talks about don't speak of injured limbs. And here, so this is an extremely important point that we in terms of especially when in terms of the practice of the bodhisattvas, and it's in the first chapter of Dharmakirti's Compendium of Pramana, in the section on the I'll call it Mimikbidayan, that the correct the valid signs of non-referential valid signs, or non-observed valid signs. There's a quote where the Buddha says, only people like me can sort of give orders or point and say, oh, this don't do this, or for instance, in the commentary it talks about pointing out people's spiritual flaws. So the Buddha says in this quote is a quote from the Buddha himself speaking, that says, I'm the only person, the only people like me are the ones who can measure other beings. Anyone who is not like me, all the others who are not like me, cannot take the measure of other sentient beings. And so what it's saying is that, so here it talks about don't speak of ancient beings, means that, you know, we don't actually know the measure of other beings, and therefore it's only people like the Buddha who can speak in regard to what is really, you know, going on inside of other people. It's only the Buddha that has the measure of that. The next line reads, don't ponder others' flaws. And, you know, so not to look at others and to sort of to see flaws and faults in them, and then to you know, to discuss them, or to think about them or discuss them. And what we have to remember is that the flaws, the perceived flaws, the flaws that we perceive in others and that appear to us are coming to us through a mistaken, they're coming to us through a kind of faulty, a mistaken way of seeing. They're what's the word? They're superimpositions. They're drawn out of the they lie, as they're at their base, they have the conception which misapprehends the way things actually exist, and then they're superimpositions on top of that. And so we need to remember that you know, the perceived flaws of others exist in that way, and so we should you know, try to cease our critical ways of viewing others. Even if you're a Dharma practitioner or not, you know, we should bring this reason that actually seeing faults in others is we should bring the reason that the faults that we're seeing in others are actually an impure or incorrect form of appearance, and therefore we should make sure to not, as it says, not to look at or not to ponder the flaws or faults of others. The next line in the verse reads, train first with the strongest destructive emotions or the mental afflictions. And so, for instance, well, this is very easy to relate to for us. We have, you know, there are people who just can't control their mouths. You know, they say all kinds of things, and they talk too much and talk about all kinds of things. And so, let's say if you're that kind of person, then you need to be able to really identify that, and to control your mind, and therefore also, you know, to control the amount you speak, and to think about talking less and talking less about all kinds of different things. If your main kind of most prominent destructive emotion is attachment, then the same, you recognize that and try to control it. Or if it's anger, then we continually try to train in and work to the antidotes of those of the strongest mental afflictions within us. The next line reads, abandon any expectations of results. And so here, whether we're Rinpoche Sonrbe, Susugi Lama, Susugi Geshi, the Sobodinzugi Rinpoche, Didre Sonrbe, Rinpoche, and the Chisolo Lekache, Kain, but they Didra, Disonrbe.
Tujing Sebon Sede.
Mari did no Debu Rewa Tamshibon, Debu Rewa Tamshibon.
Church, Lojong Yamnecha, Denny, and the Chigi, Yang, Chigi, Susur Mingda, Tamda, Kurd, Jig Saya, that to Benjo to Yungudo Sambaina, and to Tamjama Bankris. Tujing Senate Bankris.
So actually, this is also very connected to the next line below it, which talks about giving up poisonous food. in the sense that you know, whatever, let's say that, you know, we're mind training, we consider ourselves to be a mind training practitioner or a Dharma practitioner, and then if we sort of, whatever kind of work we do, whether we were working for our gurus or our teachers, or let's say we work in a Dharma center, and we have to be very careful that we don't start to think of the results that maybe would accrue to us, such as name or some kind of advantage, food, these kind of food, or some kind of financial benefit that might accrue to us from the way that we do things. So we have to, you know, that good results may come and then become focused on those. So we have to be very careful to avoid that. And this is also very connected with the next line: give up poisonous food. And here, in terms of the essential, even if we're performing virtuous activities, then this is still, and this is related to the verse above, is that this is very connected to the motivation, and how we have to understand how we're doing our virtuous practice in relation to our motivation. But we also have to make sure that you know, motivations or underlying causes of self-grasping or attachment don't come in. Self-cherishing or self-grasping or attachment don't come in. And because if those inform our motivation, then that would be like eating food which has been laced with poison, which of course will make us extremely ill or very uncomfortable. Don't be loyal to the cause is the next line. And this is mainly about sort of not holding grudges in relation to others, and not responding even if people say negative things towards us, and we want to respond back with their with some kind of negative response or fault, that we try our best to not pardon me, try the best not to get involved in any form of retaliation. And this is very similar again to the next line: don't lash out in retaliation. So again, when harsh words are spoken to us, or we actually take you have the sense that you will take on the harm. In the text, it actually says as a reward, and that we don't retaliate we don't respond and retaliate in that way. And the last line that I've spoken about here is don't lie in ambush. And again, related to the two verses above it, in the sense that we're not, you know, if somebody is someone we dislike, who harms us or says bad things to us, we don't sit around thinking about their faults and then waiting for the moment when we can actually, you know, respond. We can, you know, we don't sit around waiting for the opportunity with which to respond to that. So these are all, you know, when we're a Bodhisattva practitioner, these are the things we really have to think carefully about.
Yeah. Alleluia. Okay. Yeah. What? Big one. Okay, ta. Zoke lang la mi chu. Zoke lang la mi chu se de zo di dirisha ka zo re. So li ya ani kanye cheon de me min gol ta chi pa yo pa jong de ya ka yo che. So dine tare ton da ya mi shamba di che jo ba. 미샤발의 균주지들이 진인 그 말이었어. 교육이 제마도서. 다지게 교육이 제마도서도 조디 다지게 강토도 그 파종업이 소속이 대병업어디 라야기 탑시에 영어수 규송게네 지기 탑시체들이 진인 그 말이었어. 다 돌로메차스
양손을 안 거든 라트무스
카디
거기 세모데스
여기 제메도스도 소소의 고야기 오버지 미지리요나 미디탄에 추라야게 탑시 라면데 추라야게 탑시 지그로 봐 어디데 싸워니는 진인 거 말이었어. 교육이 제마도스 되네 돌로미차스야디 조디 가서 그러다 수수 랑 좀전도 제네 아니 셴리아 아니 지기 가서 그래 아니 밤에 셴리아 균 몽발을 소소 캡상 중 미션발 균 연구요 하고 고근 아니 도시제 삼로당은 자원이네 지금 말했어. 조다 로종 특이면은 여변하신 더 나오던 유바이 팬데만은 그는 마연네도 동 상회당 lem버 쇼 소문나시 직접 타마되는 유바들이지 저장을 개치주디 아니 경대 수술래야다 아니 개가디 심발을 피해 삼로지 되고 드선베도 된지 디단 오브저 진인 거 말했어. 달할 뒤도마법세도 전에 로종 지기의 시정 아직 전에 자원이 있는 거 말했어. 저장가 디 하트도 봐봐 세대 하트도 밥 세대 가지고 하들이야 지금에 하들이야 안 코랑 고야디 지두 아니 고여러바체 아니 고야디 다다지 마트도 고네바체 고쪽으로 봐 어디나 신시 주큐는 자원이 지두요 말이스 최신이디 아니 지게 가서 그래 아니 지금 수수 협상 자야기 제도선으로 지기 아니 최대 지켜는 지겨 말이스 다지기 야나도 두 맞춰서야 돼 아니 지금 엄발에 지금 수수 야구럽지 제가 제비나 미션을 야구럽지 제비는 주 엄발에 다지기 야구 연구를 해서 삼삼으로 변화 다지기 얘기 지기 도와지니까래 지조를 식지도 야구 쉬베나 민주 연구를 엄발에 수수비 아니 교상 첨부 연구를 했으면 되게 sam도 자원이 진인 거 말했어. 배나 또 이런 것은 지 전부링기 니주스nem도 지기 지기엘이야 대하고 지기 변조도 돈에 시간을 들이야 도당만 보지라도 잠베니 남기 파마단 저시다메 아니 톱디가나 파마 정글 하버들 아니 신의 지기 도가 줘야로 소바데 계진이 무시야로 소바데서 제야로 소바데서디 아니 삼로 야보당 우리에서 해서는 럽지스도와 어디서야 개침으로샤 다때네 내조 탐지 지기 차스 다 내조 탐지 지기 차스도 지기 가르소래 다 수수기 디 냠nen디 야보래 가전스나 가서래 수수 다직 사야다 그러다 간지진 왜 있느냐 대저 상미 지배를 삼상도시마도 수수 나의 계르기 뒤인 삼상도 매번 쓰고 그랬어. 배나 이마 겨와 군진 등바이나 디 겸에 배우기 기본 나버리 기본 나비까리야 아니 지게 기겐지기 비루를 납지견지 기게 등 어시게 다 그래도가 세상 기겐지기 기루를 납지견도 잠배 다 뒤중 되바 총을 초셔가 생이디 아니 나르기 밀라레바다 아니 다데 되려야 아니 야고 군주도 계산돼서 배진이 뭐 계산돼서 저비지 고레스지 송그레스 아니 제상 기도도 나오면 그렇지 아니 제상가 야고 군주도 뭐 배우기 개버를 아니 고라래야 디베 고사 아니 비기 숙사기 배 개강 근데 요래 아니 제상가다 개 아니 멜라레바다 대중 초시했으나 고두스 아니 겨울은 뭐지 미 배우 개버든지 인도 잠배 대중 초시했으나 다다 고금도 쉬어도가 제상가 카요 말이죠 롱어시메 롱어시메상 제브레스 아니 제상가다 겨우 군진 듬버들이야 아니 고랑기 지 다도 송야들래 아니 니마도 메도스 가르도스나 지기 치유제가 뭐부터도 탐지로 아니 배 미망 그래 삼삼시들이샤스 말이니까 수술을 여버디 최근 남자 지금 자wak이 있고 자외기 유제요와 최근 된가 뭐다 대수 뒤지고니 삼사지마도 메두스 제상가 두준 초식이 빼서 뒤인 소만하신 다 시행 탐지 내조 탐지 지리 차세도 세계 내조로서 탐지 아니 신기 초동화야 되게 좀 그랬어. 근데 로년 탐지 지리 차세도 아니 다지 로종 기념년 제베깔이야 지게 나사 중요하다 미기 내가 중요하다 미기 통중 제발로서 왔다 탐지 중백이나 닝지 기비주로 우리 세대 로년 탐지 지자 다 통단위를 자원이 시도 잠배 아니 가르치 디레 chanjugu singi ani nyamne chede cheshin bekalya ani nin lensum chen lensum soba dezo ani chame jin ko 그래서 통단위를 자원이 시제다 튼루 되는 거야 소바 dezo 개좀 잘 와대 다 니부 강중 서버 차 시도 당연 디 다디바도 이거 마스 로 서브제 로 지금도가 야 다디바도 샤샤고 디바도 직조나다 아니 얘네 다 단지 인공 잡라 speed down 거다.
Totanila chawa nis the conda karisoma remche totanila smallni.
오바니의 차원이 수두자베 지기 전주기 생기냐면 새벽 걸려야 아니 니 렌솜 chen 렌솜 다 지금 쇼베야 랑번에 손대 본다마 많이 버들 양내양도 제 팀을 쳐야 돼. 전주기 생기 랍자다. 아 탐지다 도 상을로 또 로종 들어봐 찍어 봐. 어디서 전국을 해야지.
So the next verses read. The next verses read. Don't. I forgot one from before. Sorry, Rinpoche said about don't strike the vulnerable point. Sorry, I missed that one at the end. And so this is about not the bodhisattva practice or the mind training practice here is not to sort of take interest in the fault and look into the faults of others and then try to reveal, essentially not try to reveal them to others. So it's doing things which don't cause pain to others through revealing their faults and other such negative practices. That was don't strike the vulnerable point. The next one is don't transfer the ox's burden to the cow, which is essentially just, so all of our, we're not trying to we don't try to transfer responsibility or blame, which we have, on to others, because we're working towards, the practices are working towards liberation, and therefore we should never transfer the negative behavior of transferring things which are our own responsibility onto others. Then it says don't be competitive, and so this is don't be competitive here is more in the sense, trying to things that we need, trying to acquire them. It's the trying to acquire them from others that we attempt to. I've lost my words. Actions and thoughts and actions which are focused on trying to get possessions which are generally kind of general or common possessions, but we try to get them for ourselves. Then it says don't misperform the rites. And so again, don't misperform the rites. Because dolo mechas didra Dolomachasti, that this Ratumandu Dolomite, or the Lojon Sigemaki Sigdira.
Lojon Sigeme Nalolia, Chesanga, Jaga, John Soso Link, Jaga Shamba Pugri, say, Labjadi, Kachambo Yundutambe, Katu Yunaya, Mishi Shengi, Susolia, Chepsanchirana, Mission like Chorana, something, Zawin Chigu Maris.
Yeah. So kids and run, because Chimba the Goon Raggy, the Messemba chair. And Sigje the Kikalojan, Sigje Mukis, Sigje Karisong Rumche, the Chan Sigje Sore, and in Nienche.
Dornanga than Jubai, Dorna, Mosu in a Guni in a Donanga than Jubai, and the Manam Kunopu. My another doing Samada Lama Shosejua, or Dico the Treta.
Thank you. And so in relation to this, this is don't misperform the rites, is to in order to particularly what I'm thinking about here is that to do with the sense of like not so much in terms of the performing rituals and stuff, but for instance, for one's own welfare and seeing advantages to oneself, even seeing situations where we will gain an advantage and others will accrue a negative circumstance or disadvantage, that we so that we're prioritizing our own sense of welfare over others. This is not okay. And in the 7th verse of mind training, it says, in brief, directly or indirectly, I will offer help and happiness to all my mothers and secretly take upon myself all their hurt and suffering. And so that is the way to sort of counteract that sense of where we're not doing things which are advantage to ourselves and where others suffer a disadvantage, but we practice taking secretly upon ourselves the hurt and suffering of others. Then in the next verse, don't reduce gods to demons. So this is in the terms of the mind training practice, we are sort of not turning so that when it's particularly when you're a mind training practitioner, it's very important that we don't fall foul of emotions like pride and arrogance, because when we do that, essentially what we do is turn gods into demons. Now, the way that this is explained in the text is that also here when we talk about we're also talking about worldly gods here, and in situations with worldly gods, then often if you do everything in concord with how that worldly god enjoys things, then they provide you with help. As if you don't do everything exactly as they want and you displease the worldly god, then they can harm you. So we're sort of talking in the sense of how we don't turn our mind training practice in that way of reducing reducing it down into a kind of reducing it to a demon. That's how we think about that point. And so yeah. And so the next verse is, sorry, don't seek others' misery as crutches for one's own happiness. And here this is a very there are many circumstances in the text. In the commentary it mentions for instance circumstances. An example of this would be the circumstances in the worldly environment where, let's say, we have parents and but we've been not very close to or very supportive of our parents, but then when we hear that they're close to death, suddenly we in thinking of achieving one's own advantage and aims, such as getting their wealth or possessions, we then start to become act close to them and try to visit them and make relationships with them. So that kind of practice would be, don't seek others' misery as crutches of your own happiness. The next line reads, do everything with a single intention. This is that all activities should be carried out. We should with the intention to benefit others. And there was a story of there was a teacher who was talking to a student and giving advice about how to have how to do the practice of having a small number of needs, and also practicing contentment and having small needs, a small number of needs. And he, as the teacher said to the student, he gave him two examples. He gave them the example of Milarepa, but he also gave him the example of the 7th Dalai Lama. Now the student was maybe, I don't know, Ripa Sawadog, they call it Lobtrude. And he is a little bit smart. And the student said, well, I can understand the example of, having small desires or needs and practicing contentment in relation to the Milarepa. But, the 7th Dalai Lama was a religious king of Tibet and would have had a huge palace and resources and retinue. And so it's a little bit difficult to understand how can you understand small desires and contentment in relation to that. And I think it was it Gyaran Shiki Tsongore the Gewa Gundun Dumba Gewa Gatsa Digi Ko Gyaran Shiki Dreshi Nang Rebe Sonrebe
the Lugunar yor.
So it's in the histories of the succession of the lineage of the Dalai Lama. Sorry, and there in that text it explains that the 7th Dalai Lama. So yes, he was a religious king, but the way he thought about it was his only all of the other external possessions and were all for the sake of others, and were resources only for the sake of others. But the small desires it's described in that phrase was the like the religious robes and a small number of religious artifacts that fully ordained monks keep. So in that sense, he had everything else that was supposedly his possessions were only for the welfare of others. The last verse, which we'll read here and then stop here, is counter all adversity with a single remedy. Or counter or single remedy. Nyambo yeah, yeah. Just go. The Lokshen Tamchi Chigicha on that. Logan Tamchi
Chigicha Suduch. Lojong Yamlen Chepagabria, Ani Susolia, Sugula, Semla, Ani Chigi, Shingin never chevet in the young Gabla, Ani Chigi, Kechudi, Kalasamatan with Slavina, and to do some law, Shin. I'll never change it to Ningji, some Ningji, Ningji Dumchin to change, but then Ani Tiki Pa Nibutengoris.
Yeah. And so the counter all adversity with a single remedy is then so that, for instance, when you're a mind training practitioner and you have maybe circumstances where someone, when someone is when it arises within our body and our mind that we that sort of feeling Sosuki nanlo the nusem the gebina didra or Shimbagi Nubagi.
수술이야 수고를 마대바다 쌤 마대바 수행해 주는
Well, sorry. Yeah, so when others, yeah, or DJ. So when others cause harm or cause us to experience discomfort either in our body and our mind, so it's not within ourselves, it's with others causing that, then at that time we really have to remember the reasons, generate the cause of compassion within our side of ourselves for them, and to understand their what's going on, why they're doing that through the reasons of compassion and bodhicitta. And then the last phrase is 2 tasks, one at the beginning and one at the end. And so here for bodhisattva practitioners or mind training practitioners, we both we in the morning you throughout from morning to night you have the mindfulness and awareness of what's going on with you, and whether what you're doing is whether your practices are in concord with the advice in relation to the commitments of mind training, or the advice of mind training or the commitments of mind training, and you check checking from morning to night whether your practices and behavior are in accord with the commitments and advice of mind training.
도대체 다 계제주디 다도 아주 상면의 채투를 삼삼 들리게 할 때 아주 토잡서도 가르 토잡되셨으나 라운다 신이 기타니 신디 자체 좀 전디 야보져서는 땅마토나 그때 이내 다들 로정 된데 라브제도 간다 아주 좋고 말이지 다 라운다 신이 난 신조 최고의 좀 전디 이지미 지금 아주 상당토지 올라서 안 되셔야 돼 anything 단도 break should be.
So we'll take a break now, but the main thing is that even if you sort of read all of these, we've read through all of these different practices and get the sense that I'm not sure if I can do all of this or not, but if you want to sort of make a list of and put at the top of the list what is the priority for us to do, then we should, taking the 2 of self and others, the main practice of the main advice that comes through the mind training teachings is the welfare of others is of primary importance and not the welfare of self. And so if we can't get that sense, if we can't do that, where we see the welfare of others as of primary importance and not ourselves, then we're not going to be able to properly engage in we're going to practice in contradiction to the mind training advice, and we won't be able to engage with these practices properly. So the sense that the others are more important is the thing at the top of the list.
Okay, see you after the break. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rinpoche.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We'll meet again at 1:30 Israel time and 12:30 to continue our teachings. Wait a minute. So I'll make at Israeli time 1:30 and Italy time 12:30. And for Israeli students, we have a meeting at 11 o'clock with dear Kartan. So see you again, Rinpoche, and see you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
משתתפים בעברית, אז אנחנו ניפגש בשעה 11 לסשן של שעה שאלות ותשובות עם הנזיר קרצון. תודה רבה, נתראה בקרוב.